2022 Joint Education Committee meeting. Since this committee changes the makeup of its members every year, the precedent is that the longest-serving commissioner and the longest-serving board member call the initial meeting to order and conduct the vote on approving the agenda and the election of co-chairs. So thank you, Commissioner Lundy, for your willingness to work with me on setting the agenda for our first meeting, both as former committee meetings and the longest-serving members. I wanted to note to our new commissioners and our new board members that this committee was formed several years ago to maintain a good relationship between County Commission as the funding body and the Board of Education as the policy-making body for our local schools, and to improve communication about matters important to Knox County. I know that during my time of service on this committee, I have found the information shared very valuable, and I feel that communication between the board and commission now happens on a regular basis and with a mutual respect. So with that said, do I have a motion for approval of the meeting agenda? Is there a second? All right, so the motion is approved and the agenda is set for today. I will now turn it over to Commissioner Lundy to conduct the election of our commission co-chair, and then I will lead the election of our board member co-chair. Following the election, we will turn over the meeting to our co-chairs.
Thank you so much. I guess the floor is now. Oh, thank you. Y'all so fancy over here. I love it. You're not used to all the fancy stuff. So at this time, we would take nominations for the commissioner side for elections for co-chair for this committee. I don't know how we do this formally since it's two of us.
I know.
Do we meet quorum?
Yeah.
Do we meet quorum? Can we do that? Do we have enough people?
So, I mean, with the meeting, I mean, I know you all are trying to look at commissioners versus board members, but you have a quorum at this point.
Because we
Okay,
have
so-
enough members in general.
Yeah,
In general.
correct.
Okay, so we don't have
So-
any. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So does anybody want to nominate a co-chair for this committee as far as to represent the commission?
I don't know how formal this is, just the two of you are great in those seats, and I have no desire to change either one of you. That's my personal opinion, but y'all can argue that out.
If you want to nominate, then, if you want to
I'll-
nominate, you know.
Okay, I
then you can
nominate Betsy and Daisha as the,
And we can just do it. Can we do
co-chairs.
it as like just one?
so that's my nomination. Oh, then I make a motion that those Daisha and Betsy are our co-chairs.
Second, okay. All those in favor? And is there any discussion, first of all?
No.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Same sign, okay. It's official.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yes, yes.
Madam Co-Chair.
We rule the world today.
I will have to say, I mean, Daisha and I were on this committee last year, and we loved this committee. And I was coming to this committee before I was even on the Board of Education, and I think that we just get so much out of this. Yeah. And I do feel like County Commission and the board work well together. I just think Knox County's so blessed that we have that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
With that said, I guess we'll move on through our agenda. We're lucky enough today to have Ron McPherson from the school system, and he is going to talk to us about the school budget. I know we have some new board members, we have some new commissioners, so Daisha and I always feel like this is a good way to kind of start this committee so that we all have a good understanding
Certainly.
about what goes into running the schools.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. I feel like after Gary came in, I feel like I need to apologize for my lack of festivity. I feel so boring.
Can we get him a
compared to-
light, like a necklace or a campaign or something?
Jealous, I know. It's pretty cool. So earlier in the week, I think the committee received, and Terry was gracious enough to send this out, the overhead there. And that's a financial summary through October. This is a format that periodically we will also present to the County Commission Finance Committee. We've presented this to the board. We'll send this to the board periodically. We've presented this to the Audit Committee. So this is we found that this particular format seems to be maybe I guess the most recognizable at this point for most, and that's what folks have been used to seeing. So I'll go through this. Let me just say first off that the district continues to be in a very solid financial position. And we'll discuss some of the reasons why as we go through this. So let's talk about the first section, or the top section first, and we'll just dive right into revenue. And you'll see that first.
Excuse me, before you go there, can you just help me for clarification? So while you're going and I have it in context, what is the budget year?
Oh, the budget year is fiscal year 22-23.
But what's the start and
Like, when does it
Oh,
run?
oh, the amount?
no, the start. What's the start date?
Oh, sorry, July 1.
July 1 to June 30th.
Yes, sir.
All right. Can you put that on there in the future, just so
I can.
those of us who just don't
I
know or
certainly
won't
can.
assume? Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yes, we can absolutely do that. With revenue first, so local taxes, that's going to be property tax and sales tax. Those are the two biggest items for that particular area. Property tax funds about 18% of our budget, and typically property taxes are pretty stable. We're not going to see like just great returns on property tax, right? We'll see like 1 to 2% a year in growth. It's typically just natural growth. And so it's pretty stable as the year goes on. Now there's two big months. That would be December and February, where a lot of this starts to come in, right? And so that's why you're with property tax. There was kind of a lag in those collections. But property tax generally, typically tends to be stable. Now the other portion there within local taxes is sales tax, and that funds about 37% of our budget. And this is the one we really closely monitor from month to month, because there's the potential there for more volatility, because it is obviously dependent on economic conditions, consumer spending. Now, over the last several years, the district has really benefited because consumer spending just really has it. I mean, we've had two banner years. The two biggest years I can ever remember have been back to back. The last year compared to the previous year was a 15% increase. The year before that was 15% increase. I don't ever remember increases being that strong, right, from year to year, especially back to back. And so economists just fortunately really missed it when they predicted that the pandemic would negatively impact the economy. So with respect to consumer spending, it never slowed up. In fact, it just increased, which is a kind of a really strange dynamic that we weren't expecting. However, in those years, in those COVID years, we budgeted very conservatively. So you had us budgeting very conservatively, and yet we had terrific sales tax returns. So what that allowed us to do is significantly bolster our fund balance reserves. And so over the last couple of years, we've built some really strong reserves in there because of that. So when the economy's going great, then, hey, we can sleep at night, right? However, if the economy were to significantly take a downturn, then that could be a serious issue, right? So that's why we have to be very judicious in how we utilize our reserves. I remember back in, I think it was 2007, 2008, around there, the Great Recession. We all remember that. And we had to, at that time, I think we dipped into fund balance about $10 million just to get us through the rest of the year. That was to maintain operations. We put a freeze on spending. The only thing we were paying essentially were just obviously contracts we were obligated to pay, and salaries, right, positions. And fortunately, and it took probably 3 or 4 years before the economy actually came back to the pre-recession levels. So we took a really big hit, and it took several years to even get our way out of that. And then in the interim, the federal government, I don't know if you remember this, it was ARRA, called it ARA, it was American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. So those dollars came through for school districts around the country. We were able at that time to utilize those dollars and save probably 100 teaching positions 2 years in a row. So, and which allowed us to kind of, the economy started recovering and we could get back to those levels and keep going. So it actually did what it was supposed to do, but the point I guess I'm making is that there's no guarantee that the economy will always continue to be great. And we know we live in kind of uncertain economic conditions at this point. Economists are kind of all over the place in predicting this recession. For the most part, from what we hear and read, is that, hey, there's going to be a recession, we just don't know when. So some are saying it could happen anytime. Some are saying it could happen next year. Some are actually even said, well, it won't even be till calendar year 2024. So, but anyway, they're all over the place. So economists really missed the pandemic in a good way. We're hoping they'll miss this too. But we can't assume that. So the only reason I'm saying that is we have to be very guarded and careful and strategic in how we utilize our resources. I can tell you this, that for the first couple of data points this year in tracking sales tax, it appears to be running about 9 to 10% higher than the year before. So it's still really great. However, keep in mind that the 2 previous years, it's a 15% increase year over year. So what does that mean? Well, it's still really good, but is that signs that maybe the increase is slowing down a bit? And it could be. So that's why we're going to continue to watch this very closely. That next item, state of Tennessee, that's essentially the biggest part of that's BEP, that's state funding for education, BEP program, which will become TISA next year. But with BEP, actually that's pretty consistent too once those dollars are finalized by the state. We normally receive those final allocation notices by July. It's really the 12th hour, or almost the 13th hour, because the budget's already approved, believe it or not, before the state gives us an official number, which makes it very challenging. But once those allocations are set, incrementally each month, they're really consistent. So it's just spread out over about 10 payments. Those payments, there's no volatility there. Unless you get towards the end of the year, the state may do some tweaks based on your average daily membership. Based on enrollment, it could go up, it could go down. But typically it's not like gigantic, right? There's not major fluctuations there. So that's actually pretty stable. That all other category, we have miscellaneous revenue accounts, but just so we don't throw a lot of numbers in, you kind of rolled all of that into one. But I can tell you, for the most part, that's indirect cost dollars. That's dollars that from grants that are set aside to administer the grant for administrative costs and so forth. So that would be an indirect cost from federal grants. Facility rentals would be in there, bank interest, all of those things. But I guess the main thing I want to drive home is that this key indicator, always with our budget, is going to be sales tax. Because we have stability with property tax, we have it with BEP. And so that sales tax number is the one we really focus in on every single month to take a look and see how that's tracking. And we actually do a pretty good job, I think, in forecasting that each month, because we rely on 20 years worth of data and trend information. And so we weight that data based on most recent. So there's a variety of factors that go into that, but it's proved to be very beneficial. The county and ourselves, we rely on the same model. And typically, as the year wears on, we can see where we're going. The one time again where it was a problem was the recession, right? Because that's kind of when it fell off. So, at any rate, revenue's actually trending very well. We just hope it continues. So the next section, or the part right below that, still in the top section, expenditures. No concerns at this point either. Spending is tracking fine with the budget. You'll see the first line item there, salaries and benefits. 83% of our budget represents people, which is pretty much industry standards for educational or K-12 education. That's a little over $40 million a month in payroll, just in the general purpose budget. So obviously, that's where most of our spending goes. But we're tracking fine with the budget. Contracted services, the bulk of this actually relates to probably more than half, at least half, maybe more than half, relates to bus contracts, where we contract with bus owners for student transportation. There's also maintenance contracts in there, student assessment costs, IT contracts, things that would be intuitive, like our internet's in there, software, things of that nature. Supplies and materials, probably half or more of that relates to utility costs. That's where the state tells us we have to charge it. It's always seemed kind of a little bit weird, right? But that's where we put utility costs. I can tell you too that utilities over the last, at least 10 years or more, we have saved like millions of costs in utilities through our energy maintenance department, or Did I say that right? Yeah, energy. So it's part of our maintenance department. It's energy management, and they do a terrific job in trying to make sure that at the school level especially that measures are in place to really guard those costs. So they've done a terrific job. There's no telling how many. Last time we looked at this, it was in the millions, which means that those are dollars that we can put towards educational initiatives that we're not just writing for utility payments. So at any rate, just a shout out there to our operations department. Educational materials, obviously textbooks and educational supplies would be in there. School allocations that we send from the district level, maintenance equipment and so forth. Debt on construction, that actually includes some capital cost in there too, but the bulk of that relates to a portion that is paid from the general purpose budget for capital plan initiatives. And so board members, county commissioners, I think, heard me talk about this from time to time as well. So here's what happens. So with our capital plan, the bulk of that is paid for through general obligation bonds, right? So that's going to be kind of like a mortgage. So when a school comes out of the ground, or we have major initiatives like a replacement of a roof or HVAC upgrades, those high dollar items, we actually, and the county does the same thing. It's general obligation bonds, and we pay for that over time. So we incur debt on that. We just don't write a check, for a brand new school for $25 million, right? So we pay for all of that over time. But here's what's happened. So there is a dedicated fund, a countywide fund called the Debt Service Fund, and that services debt for both county and school projects. Well, over time, our principal and interest costs for construction has exceeded the capacity of that debt service fund. And so the only other place to pay for that when it's exceeded the capacity for that debt service fund to cover all of the payments is paid for out of the general purpose budget. All of these are necessary initiatives. All of these are approved by both the board, by the commission. But just know that the capital plan, though it's accounted for in a separate fund, ultimately our general purpose budget has to bear some of that cost. So that's what's going on here. So every time there's a project, just think, the general purpose budget is, though it's absolutely needed, we had to build, have to build a new school. Just know that the general purpose budget is going to be saddled with part of that debt. And so that's, whatever that amount is, those are amounts that cannot be directed towards necessarily educational initiatives per se. But anyway, that's what that item is there for. It's been there for, I think it probably started exceeding the debt service budget 20 years ago. And it's grown over time. But now we were able to work that down back several years ago, paid off a lot of bonds, right? So because the retirement of those bonds, fortunately, all came around maybe 2017, 2018. And so those were paid off. And so that created the capacity, fortunately, to be able to roll on the new schools that we had to build. So we kind of just kind of filled in the hole, right? But we had the capacity to be able to do that. At any rate, that last one, all other category, that's going to be what I would call maybe fixed costs, for lack of a better term there. But that's going to be things where we would account for, like the trustee commission that we're required by law to send to the trustee withholds a portion of all revenue collected for all funds of the county in order to administer, run their department. So that's going to be trustee commission there. The charter school pass-through that we're required by law to pass those dollars to the charter school based on the average per pupil cost in Knox County. So whatever that average cost is, whatever the enrollment is for the charter school, we just multiply that enrollment by the average per pupil cost in Knox County. That's what we send them every month. Also, general liability charges would be in this category, workers' comp premiums and so forth. So graph to the right kind of gives you a visual there. The green bars are going to represent the budget. So on the left would be revenues, on the right is expenditures, and then actual would be the light blue there. Now, the one thing that you'll notice is that expenditures are outpacing revenue, right? But that happens every year, and the main reason for that is simply the timing of the postings for the revenue, right? So for one thing, you have property tax. The bulk of that doesn't hit until December, and another bulk in February, right? And then you also have a 2-month lag in postings for sales tax. So those are remitted to the state. The state then keeps their portion, sends the local portion back to the county. County posts it, and it goes on our books. And so there's like a 2-month lag before so that's why you're going to see every single year revenue or expenditures are going to outpace revenue, and then towards the end of the year you'll see revenue catch it. So that's kind of how it works. But nothing to be alarmed about that we're seeing there. So at the bottom of the presentation there, this is just a comparison between current year financial activity versus prior year. And you'll notice that, if you'll notice the graph on the right, revenue in the green, 2023 on the left versus 2022 on the right. You'll see revenue is outpacing this year, last year, which is always what we want to see. And so some of that's natural growth. But then there's also, I feel like I need to say this too, some of that is also due to current year postings for property tax are actually posted in a timelier manner this year than last year. The trustee migrated to a new software system last year, and so there was some delays in collections and so forth. But the thing to keep in mind is that really actually revenue activity, sales tax particularly, is outpacing the prior year. So that's always a good thing. You'll notice, though, expenditures are doing the same thing, right? So there's more expenditures this year at this time than last year at that time. Well, for one thing, keep in mind, we have a larger budget, but also a lot of that's timing. So we talked about the debt, and you'll notice that up above that debt on construction, almost 78% of the budget has been expended. That relates largely to this one payment that we send to the county to supplement the debt service fund. And so all that's reflected here at the bottom is that we made that payment last year came at a later time than it did this year. So that's all that's going on there. It's just kind of a timing sort of thing. So anyway, I guess the thing to take away from all of this, still it's a really positive report. We're in a good fiscal place right now. But there's this uncertain economy that kind of just keeps nagging at us a little bit, right? So that's why we want to be really guarded in how we use our resources. But appreciate our finance team for really staying on top of this. I got to say also that in our departments do a fantastic job of managing their own budgets. They really do. We just don't have any offenders. People really get it. They want to be careful with their dollars. They're aware of budgetary limits. And if they think they're going to go over in a particular area, they're good, to reach out to us and say, hey, there's something we were not expecting, but we think we're going to have savings in this area, so can we just move the money over? And so the board approves line item transfers every quarter as we go through the years, but our departments do a really good job, so we're very appreciative of them. So anyway, that's the report, Madam Chair, and I'll be happy to take any questions if anybody has.
And this can be informal discussion, questions.
I have a question. I'm curious, just because I'm wrapping my head around all this stuff, if we have anything that's accumulated, like in some of the unspent salaries and benefits that we've budgeted, what have we accumulated so far this year?
With respect to vacancies? Or you mean accumulated? Or
kind of in respect to vacancies, but also just in general. I'm just curious if there's, what's going on there.
I want to make sure I answer this question correctly. So when you say accumulated, can you help me?
That's what's in the budget that we haven't spent yet.
Yeah. Okay, that's always going to be vacancies, right, for the most part. And I can tell you there are some challenging areas that we continue to face. One of those is going to be special education assistants, right? And so over the last 2 years, we've increased that salary for 8% for the last 2 years to try to encourage folks to. But it's a real challenge. I can tell you that right now, finding those folks. Another one that's a real challenge is custodials, and we've increased those by 8% as well over the last. I think Ms. Henderson may have to help me remember. Does that sound right?
It is, yeah.
And so. We've made purposeful efforts to try to secure those vacancies, but it's made it really difficult on some of our other custodians because they're having to take up that workload. There's going to be some dollars captured there. So on the good side, right? There's money that's not spent. That would be money that could be spent on other initiatives, or it could roll into our fund reserve at the end of the year. The downside is, though, practically speaking, it presents some real challenges. Those are the two areas I would point to more than anything.
Is that money that can be spent on initiatives for custodians
Sure
and
could.
for some of the special?
It could, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask a follow-up on that. So if we were contracting for services that, for custodial services, that would go into the contracted services line item,
It would.
correct?
It would. That's correct. But what we would do in that event is we would come back to the board and we would say, here's a cost analysis if we want to fill in between the gaps. In other words, we can't fill these vacancies, it looks like, but here's some strategies in order to help in this area. And so what would happen in that case is we would bring it back to the board and we would say, here's our strategy for funding that, and what would happen ultimately is I could envision something like it would be a line item transfer we would bring before the board to approve, that we would move X amount of dollars out of personal services and salaries and benefits, which would be employee turnover, move it into contracted services, and that's how it would mechanically
And
work.
this may be more of a school board question than a joint education committee question, but have you looked at the cost of contracting versus what we're paying, what the custodians are, packages, because I know it's not just salary, but it's benefits and other things there.
Yes. So Dr. Adams is and his folks are taking a hard look at that. I would say that, and there are some strategies that they're very aggressively looking at. I would say that anything that would be brought before the board, it would be my thoughts that it would not be necessarily that would be more about to supplement, right? So it wouldn't be it wouldn't be anything where custodians have to worry about their job or anything, right? It would be more along the lines of, hey, here are some gaps, because we just can't fill these vacancies. Right. And so we would contract out with a firm, right? And then they could supply X number of positions through a contract that would essentially could temporarily fill in these vacancies as we continue to try to fill them.
So would that contracting include a process to give all companies an opportunity, or would it be that we just look for a specific company?
Well, I think it would have to go through it'd have to go through all of the, I'm going to defer to Mr. Dupler here, but so it would have to be sound from a procurement standpoint, right? Whether that's through an RFP, whether that's through a bid, whether that's through perhaps an existing contract, maybe that another district, or through the state. So sometimes we can do things like that, but it would definitely have to be in alignment with procurement rules.
Thank you.
I'm going to ping off of that one. And staying on the custodian topic, if with some of this unspent accumulated funds from what would have been paid out from the people that are just not in those positions, but not going to the contract route, what is the avenue to maybe ask for what we can do for incentives, or what you guys might be thinking of? Is that this committee, or is that a board meeting?
I think that's probably a board meeting.
Okay.
But I can tell you this, that we have also, we have provided, I don't know if it's stipend or bonus, like incentive bonuses, not only to recruit new positions in, but also to retain positions, right?
Yeah.
And so we tried that. Gosh, I don't know, Ms. Henderson, we tried that, was it last year? I probably need our HR folks here,
Yeah, I think it was last year, I believe, that we tried to do.
But we still had issues. I
Yeah.
mean, it was crazy. It's like, hey, we can use this and that. And I'm not saying it didn't help, right? So it helped some. And then we raised the salary. It's like, hey, this is what, but it's those challenges just haven't went away. It's really frustrating.
Because I was at one of the schools last week in my district and just chatting with the principal, and the principal was saying, like, even though all of their positions are filled, they still have high turnover.
Yeah.
And, that was something that was, it's an elementary school, so that was something really hard, because, like, the kids are seeing these people, and it's like a new person every time, and then it's hard to kind of get, like, all of that situated. And thank you for all that you're doing and everyone is doing, but I'm definitely concerned about it. And I'm concerned if we do a contract for an outside vendor, what happens when those turnovers are happening and those positions are filled by the contract person, and then that just becomes status quo? Is there any plan in place to make sure that it doesn't become status quo?
You know, so I really, it'd probably be better if I could, you know, Dr. Adams could speak to this way better than I could. But I can tell you though that our folks are, you know, Dr. Adams and Superintendent, I think I can speak for him too, that we're really protective of our own folks, right? And so in every instance, I think we're going to do everything we can to fill our own vacancies. And so this, if we're to come back to the board with a proposal, again, it would not supplant anything that we would want to do. That's not the intent, obviously. It's to supplement, you know, or kind of fill in between the gaps. But there would not be this notion that when there's a vacancy, I mean, my thought would be that again, we would do everything we can to try to fill that vacancy, right? Because those would be our employees.
Yeah.
And so we want to be very protective of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Great questions.
Thank you.
Question about the capital.
Yes, sir.
You know, so how much are we, I mean, it looks like, is that full 18 million? Is that what's coming out of general purpose? You know, so
That, yes.
24 million a year, give or take, whatever.
Yes, I will say that the difference there, that 5 million, that a lot of that may relate to the difference. So between the 18 and the 23, a lot of that might relate to what we did with some fund balance designations that the board approved that we kind of rolled in to supplement the capital plan. But yes, with respect to debt, for this year, and again, this varies every year depending on the structure of the bonds. This year it's about 18 million. I think that's probably a little over 50% of what our total debt. I think our total debt this year, I'd have to go back and look, but it's around probably 33 million or so.
Do you see that as a concern, as something we want to reduce and get back?
I do see it as a concern, actually,
Do
because
you think that's possible to get it reduced, or are we just in the nature for the last 20 years of using it, so we're just going to have to keep doing that?
Well, it's a great question. So keep in mind, we built 3 new schools. Right, and so we have to keep a really strong eye on this, and so it's the way to, and the county does a good job with the bond council and so forth. The county does a really good job to always look for the best interest rates, and so it's not unusual every couple of years for the county to go back and say, hey, we're going to, this is my term, refinance this, and so for better rates. So if we can get those bonds paid off, some of those, we take a look at it, it's like there's not nearly enough bonds that come off over the next couple of years that makes me feel better about this. So this is the thing I think we have to really be strategic once again in how we look at this. One particular thought we've had is with the additional TISA dollars. A concern with TISA is that, okay, this notion of sustainability, while it may be initially pretty significant dollars that roll into us next year, we don't know what that is yet. But in what we've seen in for models from the state is that in future years, the increases, the money's still there, but the increases don't really look sufficient to sustain just inflationary costs, just based on the models, unofficial models we've seen. So the one thing we don't want to do is be in a position to where we get an influx of dollars, we turn around and program different educational initiatives into using these dollars, and then lo and behold, next year we can't even fund the inflationary increase, and now we're cutting projects or programs that we already started. So one plan that we have is to take a hard look at perhaps we can take in the first couple of years, we can kind of ease into it by trying to create capacity in the general purpose budget by perhaps using some additional dollars to pay down some of this debt or pay down some of the capital plan initiatives. So this is the thing that with capital plan and budget, again, they're in different funds, but we can't divorce them from one another because the capital plan directly affects what we do in the general purpose budget. So we have to kind of look at those trade-offs and be really strategic in how we utilize those dollars. But it is a little scary when you take a look at just the 5-year capital plan, and there's nothing on there that's not needed, right? I mean, all of this is needed. But, you have to look at this. I mean, we've got the 3 new schools. We've got additions and renovations at another one of our high schools. We've got one at one of our elementary schools. Pretty significant amount of dollars needed, right? We have HVAC needs, so we have to address every year roofing upgrades. So all of that being said, I would say it is a concern. Yeah, it's a good question.
Sorry, I have another question, kind of like pinging off of that. So in our last meeting, we kind of discovered that some of the construction on some of those schools took out some of the playgrounds or rendered them kind of like non-accessible, and that, as I understand, that's something like if Knox County Schools takes out an already existing playground, they're supposed to put it back in. Was that in the budget for those schools?
Probably need to defer to to our operating folks here.
Yeah.
So typically those budgets are derived from our construction folks.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hesitant to actually say they were or were not in there.
Yeah.
I do think there's the idea that that's something that we can't ignore,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think our folks are taking a hard look at that, obviously.
So they're gonna take a look at and see if we have funds or how that works to replace those playgrounds.
We got an email about that. I think one of John's emails.
Did we? I must have missed that one.
It was in the middle of 100 other things. But
Okay.
I think they're going to bring some in January.
Oh, okay.
To figure
Oops.
out both those schools.
Oops.
Yeah.
Okay. Well
Okay.
then, just kidding.
No, I
So
appreciate
it's
you
a fair
asking.
question, but I think
Yeah.
they're going to bring some in January to figure out
Okay. Awesome.
both those facilities.
Okay.
Still exists, by the way. It was rendered inaccessible due to construction, but it should be, and I think that was part of the message as well. It should be accessible in the near future.
It is. I think like when the kids come back from Christmas break, they'll be able to utilize that playground.
What exactly makes it inaccessible? Is it like a fence or something, or?
I'm not sure. To my understanding, it was close to a construction zone where like a hard hat area or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a fence up for a reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
What made that door inaccessible today?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Reach
You
out
always do
anytime.
a great job.
Thanks. Thank you.
I just want to thank you again for coming. I think it's always important to start the year of these meetings off listening to a budget report from Mr. McPherson because, as a funding body, County Commission is our funding body, so I think it's important for you guys to see how we are utilizing the dollars that are given to us by the county, that we're being good stewards of our money, and just kind of where does the money go? And, I always think that it is eye-opening that 83% of our budget goes to salaries and staff because we are in the people business. So I know every time I hear that number, I just think it's humbling to know that, Knox County education is such a huge part of Knox County, and our teachers and our custodians are such a vital part of this community. So thank you so much for that. So next on our agenda, we're going to look at just kind of the meeting schedule. I know in the past this committee meets 3 times a year, and so we just kind of want to set those dates and times. I know I'm pretty flexible, so we can have a conversation about that. And Ms. Coney, I can't remember, how does it work where the actual agenda, do Daisha and I work with you to, okay, so we're just setting the dates and time of what works for everybody.
And know that we end in August.
Yeah, we end in August because new members are elected to this committee or assigned to this committee in September. So typically we meet November, December, so that's this month. February, March, and May and June will be the next meetings. Yeah, 2 more meetings. Yeah. So we're looking at February and March, kind of the next And I don't know if this time or date works. Last year we did it in the afternoon. We did Wednesday afternoons last time, so I'm pretty flexible. So.
Keep in mind that our board meetings changed to Thursday. It may not be a Thursday, it might be the best day.
Yeah. Well, that's what we did. So last year, we met Wednesday right before our board meetings.
How long do we need to have?
An hour. These meetings are an hour. Oh, that's right, policy review. That's what we did. Yeah, yeah.
I think having them before one of our meetings sounds like a great idea. We're already here. I think
Well, that makes it easy on us. It doesn't make it any easier.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of.
When
what
are y'all
works
meetings?
for-
When?
Does lunchtime work better, which is just kind of whatever? right?
Yeah, lunchtime is, I
Or
mean,
does it work better for y'all to do it like 4 o'clock?
Well, I mean, I can, when are y'all meetings? When is the school board meetings? Is it third?
so the first
First-
Monday and
first
first
Monday.
Thursday of the month.
First Monday and first Thursday.
Terry, that we did it.
We did it for policy review.
When is policy review?
When is our
First Monday?
policy review? Let's see.
This time, but
January, it'd be March, let's see.
We looking at March?
Yeah.
Okay.
Terry, when is I know we have policy review in January. Do we have one set for March? I don't have my calendar. I usually have that on there. March the 20 what?
24th?
Oh,
yeah,
that's
this is the 24th.
it's the 24th. Oh, now
That's-
I see
You
it.
want to do
Yeah.
it at 11 o'clock?
That's Friday?
So March
The
24th is when we have policy review from like 9 to 11 in the morning.
I'd rather do it in the morning. I'm speaking
Yeah.
for myself.
Earlier than 11?
Yeah.
I mean, let's meet at 8 o'clock before the policy review.
Who is supplying breakfast?
Yeah.
It'd be easier
I
for
know.
Does Knox
Yeah.
County Schools have money in their budget to give us breakfast?
Yeah, can we do breakfast, Mr. McPherson? Is that in the budget?
But policy review is at 9, right?
Yeah.
I meet at 8.
So
Is
8
that too early for
a.m.
folks?
Yeah, I'll just drop my kids off early.
March
Will
24th.
that work? Let's do March 24th at 8 o'clock. We good with that?
Yeah.
Terry, you're going to send these out in email because I'm
Gina,
Thank you.
are you okay with that, Gina? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll survive without.
And then
Terry's
what if-
emails.
And Terry, reach out to the other two.
Yeah. What about May or June?
Do we have
I have policy review. Oh, it's May 19th at 9 a.m. So do you want to do May 19th at 8 a.m. again? Okay. Okay.
I'm early, so
Yeah, I wake up at 5:30, so I'm good, y'all. I mean, I don't know, you don't want to meet at 5:30, but
oh, fine. Let me know where.
be up for 3 hours.
Yeah, I'm not gonna hang out. What was it, May 19th?
Yes, yes. All righty. And then Daisha and I will work with Terry on the agenda. And yeah, that's what I was thinking, because one thing I love about this committee is, one, it's a laid-back committee, it's very collaborative, so if there are things that you guys want to see discussed in these meetings, please send them to Terry, and we can get them on the agenda. That's what I love about this committee.
Yeah.
I've learned so much.
Good deal. So March 24th, May 19th.
Mm-hmm.
And you're buying breakfast.
Yeah. That's what we have down.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. Does anybody else have anything to add? Any last questions or comments? No?
I just want to echo remarks of thank you. I just noticed that 3 of your newest board members are on this committee, so that means that we definitely needed you to explain that today.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's very helpful, very helpful. All right, well, if there's nothing else, we will, oh, did you have, I'm sorry, I thought you were bringing it down. Okay, well, I want to wish everyone a happy holiday, Merry Christmas. I hope everyone has a blessed holiday season. I hope that, our schools have fun parties and fun events to end the year. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. Ooh, and I get a gavel now. Ooh, that's fun. I am pretty